Welcome. I start with a very early work. It is from 2006. I was still studying at Hochschule für Gestaltung Zürich, and I was able to develop a diploma catalog for my fellow students. I came up with the idea of producing portraits of each project, which would provide some insight into research materials, into working methods, and also giving an atmosphere of the working environment they were working in. Because some of the students, they would work in school, some would already have their own office. So I wanted to give an impression of the atmosphere. So we therefore visited the students and asked them to unfold research matter, working tools, and to present them in a project-related way. At this moment, it was the first time that the officials of the graphic design department, they decided to no longer finance these kind of publications. So we had to finance it ourselves and to publish it ourselves. So the budget was really tight, and in the beginning we thought about doing a black and white publication, which was really disappointing because all these materials and the images and all these diverse little materials you see in the portraits, they would totally lose the impression. So what we did is we decided to print it in two colors, dark blue and red. So it's a special style of separation for creating the impression of a color photograph. Each project is presented on 4 pages. There's this entering page with the portrait. Then they had like a double page for themselves. They were free to use it. And there's the description and icons which would show the products they were developing. The next project is a self-commissioned project. I did it together with Büro Hammer from Zurich. In 2011 we were invited to participate at Font Market Zurich. And Font Market was a one-day event. And they invited young type designers to show their type designs, to sell typefaces and related printed materials. So we decided to do a publication. We wanted to make a comment on the type design situation, also provoke in a way. And we did a publication of about 600 pages showing free font specimen. When we searched the web for free fonts, we recognized that these different pages like the font and font space and 1001 font free fonts, all of them were sharing quite a unique system of how to classify typefaces, which is unusual. So we decided to include all of these categories. The system of classification, it's more about appearance and associations of a typeface than it's about any historical specifications. Categories like holidays and kids or snow and ice. So it obviously addresses the amateur user of typefaces in a way. There are like millions of free fonts around. So every one of us was going through thousands of free fonts, and we choose them. The criteria was very randomly. It was individual taste. Sometimes we would show each other the typeface and say, would you include that, or is it too bad? This is also print on demand, which means we were limited to 650 pages. It's produced by Lulu. So we were limited in choosing the typefaces. It might sound a little bit compromising or regarding it as just foolish fonts, but I have to say I regularly take it out of the shelf and use it. Sometimes there are really nice typefaces I use in projects. I remember one guy, he's a book designer from Zurich, and he was walking by our table like 10 times before buying one of those. He was feeling kind of awkward buying free font catalog, I think. For this project, I was asked by a big industrial laundry in Zurich to produce a book for selected clients. The book should portray the company and service by showing the entire cleaning process. And on the other way, the owner of the laundry, he didn't feel much valued by his customers and wanted to make visible the great value of his service. So we visited that place, and as it is a laundry, I was a bit skeptic because obviously a big laundry like this isn't that charming, and just showing the production or cleaning process, the content would be a little bit predictable. So I developed 3 different image concepts which appear parallel within the book. The first image concept is like he was asking the production process. Then we created still lives of the laundered products. So this is actually mainly photographs. The main goal was to create diverse feelings of freshly washed laundry, and at the end actually make it as enjoyable as possible. Here I think the materialization of the book played a really big role. So when we were taking these piles of tissues, taking photographs of them, and I was getting to know the feeling of these tissues, I instantly knew it had to be Japanese binding with a quite thin paper, and it has really fluffy feeling, which is quite similar to the feeling of these tissues. So for this project I worked together with a friend of mine who's a photographer from Hamburg. He actually does art photography. So he was, in the beginning it was really hard, and we spent like a week doing only photography. This is a recent work. It's a website for a consulting agency, and this consulting agency, like they work with managers and teams, and they try to improve teamwork and working process and stuff like that. And they had a website, and I was really struggling with the content, especially the texts and the stereotype images of people smiling and really white atmosphere and stuff like that. So I reworked the text and got rid of the images, and instead of these images I created GIF animations, which are quite general in nature actually, but within the website they are controllable by the user. So if you move the cursor, the GIF animation would play. Quite simple. So instead of visualizing just the process, visualizing the process of consulting, which is pretty hard, I wanted to create a metaphor so that the user gains, in a way, the feeling of controlling and influence. This is typeface called Quick, and I started Quick by just sketching with a broad nib, with a broad marker. And this marker provides a really strong contrast between horizontal and vertical lines on the one hand, and on the other hand I rotated the marker to create this quite unusual style of stress, so the contrast is flipped in a way. The forms themselves, maybe they're like influenced by Picasso, graffiti, influenced by sign painting. So I did sketch all letters by hand before digitizing them, and as you see I very roughly sketched them. So as you see, the marker, it loses more and more opacity during writing. which means that the strokes are clearly distinguished in the analog version. It is not possible, and actually I didn't want to imitate this fading effect in the digital version. So I had to find special solutions for these intersections, especially for small letters. So a lot of things happened during the design process in FontLab for the digital version. I also started with one-to-one digitalization, and then I saw that these letters, they should have like a volume, and I added a little bit of volume to the characters. And the hardest part was the small letters, actually. So there you see unusual letter forms, which results from rotating the tool. The next typeface I'm going to show is called Crack. This is a type designed by German graphic designer Erwin Pöll. He's from Heidelberg, and he designed this typeface in the 70s. It was published by Berthold, but it was never transferred to digital version. So, and also this is a very modular typeface, and I'm not so into modular typefaces actually. I was still quite fascinated by the diverse letter forms, still. And I thought it was worth digitalizing it. Also because I saw much potential in modernizing the letter forms. So on the left side you see the Erwin Pöll type design, and on the right hand the Crack typeface. So the letters got more roundish, or the round letters like the C and O, the G. There are also letters like K, M, N, which I wouldn't be able to improve them, so I kept them. And those overlappings, I wanted to make them more extreme or more consistently. So you see like the G, it has two overlappings, which wouldn't appear at the original typeface. And I also refined the modular system. I think the Pöll version, it has like 3 modules, and I was refining it to be able to create quite complex letter forms like the euro sign, for example. This is already the last type design project I'm going to show you. I was asked by a Zurich design agency to design numerals for a watch for Nomos in Germany, and the brief was quite loose, but they knew that they would produce the numerals by having them punched in metal. And that means that the angles of the corners, they mustn't be too small actually. So I decided to design all corners with an angle of at least 90 degrees. For the letter form itself, I wanted to create numerals with a very classic and open and very legible look. So I took inspiration from American Gothic typefaces, which are supposed to be very legible. Goal was to have the counters, the inner counters of the letters, to have them appear very roundish, also in this very, very small application. To have a nice and an even appearance, there were a lot of optical corrections necessary. And it all started with the visual dimensions of the numbers. They had to appear in a similar dimension within the watch, which is especially hard with numbers who have 2 digits, like 10, 12, 11. What you see here is it starts with 10, And the 1 within the 10 is the smallest character, actually. And it increases from 10 to 8. So you can see 8 is the character which has mathematically the biggest dimensions, but should optical appear in the same size within the watch. So this was a lot of trial and error and back and forth. And this is regarding the appearance of monoline typeface. So we wanted to have them appear monolinear. So what you do is you design the horizontal strokes a little bit thinner than the vertical strokes. This is probably the most obvious thing you would do. It also very common with other typefaces. To have the roundish appearance, I had to expand the letter forms. In the end, I actually ended up with very extended letter forms. If you look at the big scale, but if you watch or if you look at these numbers in really small scale, the counter of the 9 would appear like a circular. Here you see the corners, which mustn't be, or the angles mustn't be too small, and here it's designed at least an angle of 90 degrees, which means you have like gaps where lines meet, but you wouldn't see this in the small version, of course. Also to have an optical visual center, it's located much higher than usual. Some letters like the 4, I had to enlarge them optically, and I did so by creating these gaps to fill them characters with white space, and they would appear bigger. Links, which would enter a stem with a curve, they were decreased in width to avoid too much blackness where they meet. Another correction was the 1 versus 11. So the number 1's nose was shortened when it acts as a number 11. So the 1 has a bigger nose than the 1 within number 11.